Welcome, everyone, to A Call for Judgment. Today's show, I want to talk about this story, which I've covered in the past, and I want to show you some of the repetitiveness of the story and why they keep putting this out there as if it's something new. And that is to get people prepared for this. And that is about how scientists have created the first human synthetic model embryos. In other words, they're creating, what you would call humans, which aren't humans, without using sperm and egg. And I've covered this in the past, how there's stories, there's chambers, there's all these things that we've seen that are like out of a sci-fi movie of creating human beings. And it's not new. It's not new. It's something that they've talked about even on the mainstream media 15 years ago. And I'll show you a clip from even 15 years ago where they've talked about how they've developed this technology. So the question is, why are they talking about it as if it's new technology? Well, the reason is they're preparing people for this. Because you could look at the two flip sides. We hear stories about this and how we can create humans, right? And people would be like, why would we ever do that? And then on the flip side, how many stories are we hearing week after week about people who are unable to have children? About how the rates of birth, the birthing rates are so far down. If you look at an actual graph of, families and how many children they have, it's incredible, right? It's almost like it's deliberate. Oh, right, it is. Just the parents and the families who are trying to have kids don't know that it's deliberate because we're being poisoned from our skies. We're being poisoned in our foods. People are willingly putting poison in their bodies. Thus, man is not able to recreate. But don't worry, because Big Brother and our trusted scientists out there, they'll be able to do it for you. Here's some of the stuff that's out there about creating synthetic model embryos.
Welcome back, everyone. On the Medical Watch this afternoon, scientists say they have created synthetic human embryos using stem cells, sidestepping the need for eggs or sperm. The world's first embryo-like structures are at the very earliest stages of human development, and they don't have a beating heart or a brain. Scientists in the U.S. and U.K. say they could one day help advance the understanding of genetic diseases or the biological causes of recurrent miscarriage. The work is raising serious ethical and legal questions. Lab-grown entities like this fall outside current legislation in most countries.
And scientists announced today they have made a major breakthrough in the quest to create life in a laboratory. For the first time, they have produced a living cell in which the active DNA was put together by computers. What does this mean for science? And does it mean there is now synthetic life? Dr. Richard Besser is here. Rich.
That's right, Diane. Today's announcement marks a major turning point. Researchers have now created life from non-living parts. They call it a synthetic cell. World-renowned geneticist Craig Venter has been trying to unlock the mystery of life for 15 years. What have you achieved?
Well, we announced today the first synthetic cell. Instead of having a genetic relative that it evolved from, the parent of this cell is a computer.
What Venter has done is astonishing. With just 4 bottles of chemicals off the shelf in his lab, his team replicated more than 1 million bits of genetic code to create a living organism. Here's how it worked. They isolated bacterial cells and removed all of their genetic material, the DNA from inside. Then they took those 4 bottles of chemicals and used them to create new genetic material. They transplanted it into the empty cell. That material, that new cell booted up and began to reproduce. And reproduce. 1 billion times.
I think this is the creation of life, and I think it's an experiment that shows that life is not a mystery, that it's not some mysterious force that infuses things that makes them come alive. If you put the right genetic message in the right order, put it into the right environment, it will come alive.
But along with promise comes precaution.
Like any great scientific innovation, this has enormous promise and enormous peril. This may allow us to make more virulent viruses. This could unleash a bacterium on the world that has properties we didn't expect that could cause great disease or ecological damage.
Scientists will surely debate whether this is truly creating new life, but no one can deny the potential impact of this achievement. Venter says that within a year, this technology will be producing vaccines, and in the future, bacteria may be used as powerhouses to generate energy and clean up oil spills.
I'm not so sure with what the one person said, that life is not a mystery, by the way. But what's the one word you've been hearing from scientists all day?
Historic.
Historic. And it's going to be banner headlines in the scientific world for
That's
sure.
right.
Thank you, Rich Besser.
So sure, this is just what we need, right? Now, how would they ever get people convinced? If you told somebody 30 years ago that they were doing this, they'd say it's ethically wrong, that it's disgusting, that it's disturbing, that this should never be allowed to happen, right? Just like that clip, if you saw the video that has Kanye in the thumbnail, I go in to show clips of Bill Clinton talking about the ethics of cloning, right? They're talking about the ethics of cloning, yet most people don't even realize they have the ability to clone humans. Right? They're like, that's a crazy conspiracy theory. Oh, like that movie this or that movie that, Multiplicity, et cetera, et cetera. Right? They don't even realize they have the ability to do it, let alone talk about ethics of doing it. So when you look at a story like that and they're talking about the ethics of creating what wouldn't even really be a human being in a petri dish or whatever they're called, think about how they would convince people to do that, right? Because people would say, why in the world would we ever do it? This isn't ethically correct, et cetera, et cetera. So then they start planning subliminal messaging about how the human race, we're running, we don't have enough people. We're running out of people. That's going to be the next narrative, even though we know that they're depopulating on purpose. Well, they're depopulating because they also want to bring in a hybrid race of humans that aren't really humans. They want to replace regular humans, the everyday human like me and you, with these humans that aren't really humans, ones that they can create. That's the craziness of it, that people will never believe. There is no ethics behind it because it's not an ethically moral thing to do. They're the ones who are creating the problem of humans procreating. They're the ones who are telling people that they should abort the child here and there. I mean, there's procedures in place. I'm sure most of the moms out there know there's procedures in place where they even, they try to test on the moms throughout pregnancy to make sure that the baby is what they would call normal and doesn't have some type of genetic, issue, or might not be this, or might come out like that, to try to tempt the parents even into aborting the child. I mean, these are the psychological things they do to try to depopulate the human race. But don't think for 1 second that they just want it to be empty around here. They want to depopulate the human race and create their hybrid race. So a team of researchers in the United States and United Kingdom say they have created the world's first synthetic human embryo-like structures from stem cells, bypassing the needs for eggs and sperm. And again, not a new story. The ABC News clip is from 15 years ago. You might say, oh, okay, well, it's advanced since then. Well, everything that they do is, they tell us about it. They're 30 years ahead at least. Some say 50 years ahead. So this isn't like some type of new thing. And a year ago, I covered this exact story. They released this story as if it was brand new a year ago. Now they're doing it again. CNN, all the mainstream media is coming out releasing this as if it's new. And it's like, wait a minute. And I guess they think that people will forget because of 5G, et cetera, et cetera. But all one has to do is go into YouTube and type it in, or go into a Google search and type it in, see how many articles or videos are out there from even truthers talking about this years and years ago. So obviously they want to continue to seed plant with this for a reason. These embryo-like structures are at the very early stages of human development. They don't have a beating heart or a brain, for example, but scientists say they could one day help advance the understanding of genetic diseases or the causes of miscarriages. And of course, that is not the reason that they're doing this. I mean, you think they're going to this effort so that they could have an understanding of genetic diseases or the cause of miscarriages? Yeah, I can tell you, why there's so many miscarriages this day and age. Where do you want to start? You want to start with what's in the sky, what's in the food? You want to start with, those towers that are around that are giving radiation to the unborn child? Yeah, we could start and end there because that's the reasoning. So the research raises critical legal and ethical questions, and many countries, including the U.S., don't have laws governing the creation or treatment of synthetic embryos. The pace of discoveries in this field and the growing sophistication of these models have alarmed bioethics experts as they push even closer to the edge of life. They say, unlike human embryos arising from in vitro fertilization, IVF, where there is an established legal framework, there are currently no clear regulations governing stem cell-derived models of human embryos. There is an urgent need for regulations to provide a framework for the creation and use of stem cell-derived models of human embryos. And again, you would hear this, and I'm sure a lot of you are like, oh, that'll never happen. That's exactly what they expect you to say. When IVF first happened, most people were like, I would never do that. That's not natural. What, I give them my egg, I give them my sperm, and then they create it in a laboratory? Yeah. But people would have said, no way, 10, 15 years ago. Now it's like the new norm because nobody can get pregnant anymore. They're not even thinking about the fact that why they can't get pregnant. They're just immediately going, oh, I'll try IVF. I mean, I can get pregnant that way, right? And you have a baby that way? Yeah, sure, yeah. Instead of being like, why? What is the reasoning about it? How come so many people 50 years ago they were getting pregnant really quick, really easily? Why is it so hard now? Nobody asked the question. They just immediately turned to IVF, right? But 10 years ago, they were like, I would never do that. I'm going to keep trying, right? So they just normalize these things because through time and beating into your heads, that's how they normalize it. 5 years from now, nobody's going to be, they're going to be like, oh, stop, because they're so desensitized to the movement that's going on with the kids in the libraries, right? We're all looking at it right now. It's like, oh my gosh, but we all felt the same way about the beginning of this whole process with, Ellen DeGeneres, et cetera, which I can't say in detail, so I have to code it. But you know what I mean? In the beginning, it was like, ooh, ew, huh? That's never going to be normal. Oh, now it's so normal that we're at the stage where we're dealing with this other stuff, which is insane, right? That's how it works. I mean, over time, you get desensitized to this stuff, over it getting beaten into your head and having to accept it in daily life. Like this woke stuff, as everyone's in an uproar about it, they know that you're going to be in an uproar about it, but they're going to keep doing it. And they're going to keep doing it until it's just like you give up and it's normalized, because that's eventually what happens. The pushback now will not be pushback in 5 years. It'll be like, oh yeah, they've been doing it for years. And that's all this stuff works. So Dr. Magdalena Zenaka-Goetz, sounds American, described the work in a presentation Wednesday to the International Society of Stem Cell Research's annual meeting in Boston. The professor of biology and biological engineering at Caltech and the University of Cambridge said the research has been accepted at a well-regarded scientific journal, but has not been published. The research was first reported by The Guardian. The embryo-like structures that Zernika Goetz says her lab has created were grown from single human embryonic stem cells that were coaxed to develop into 3 distinct tissue layers. She said they include cells that would typically go on to develop a yolk sac, a placenta, and an embryo itself. She told CNN that the embryo-like structures her lab has created are also the first to have germ cells that would go into development into egg and sperm. She says, I just wish to stress that they are not human embryos, they are embryo models. That's because they're not human. They're embryo models, she says, but they are very exciting because they are very looking similar to human embryos and very important path towards discovery. Right, so they're taking the model of creating a human being with these embryos, which of course would not be human. But what they're trying to do here, as we see over and over again, is they're trying to play God. That's what they continue to try to do. And that's one of the reasons they want control over your life, is they want to play God. You know how God knows what we're thinking, right? God knows what we're feeling. That's what they want to do. That's one of the reasons they want to be inside of our bodies. They don't just want to know your thoughts because they want to know if you're going to go do something to them or whatever for pre-crime purposes. They also want to play God. They want to know what you're thinking because God knows what you're thinking. They want to be inside your head. They want to be inside your home, everything, right? It's because they want to be God. They're trying to play God. And this is more proof of that. It's a frightening technology that should not exist, yet it does. And yet they're pushing it. And people out there at first might be like, that doesn't sound ethical or moral, just like with cloning. Now, they still don't even believe cloning is real, which is crazy. But over time, as they continue to put propaganda out there about how people aren't able to have babies and aren't able to have children, but science is stepping in and they're able to create a new breed of human, which is a human hybrid. And people will be like, what is that? And they'll be like, well, it's a better human. These don't get sick. These can procreate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they'll be transhumans. That's what they'll be. And society will accept it because they'll convince them that, oh my gosh, we're running out. The human race is going to become extinct. Meanwhile, they're the ones who are making the human race become extinct. Pretty crazy psychologically, but this is what they're doing. And this is the type of technology that they're attempting to normalize. I thank everyone for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families.